Hey everybody, I'm Ubercoo. Today I'm going to be reviewing Dave. Dave is a movie from 1993. It has a whole slew of great actors. It stars Kevin Klein and Sigourney Weaver, Kevin Dunn, who plays the communications director. Then you also have Frank Langella, who plays the chief of staff. Now, the Frank Langell's character is Bob Alexander, and then you have Kevin Dunn, who is named Alan. I don't remember his last name. Reed. That's right. Um, they are also Kevin Klein actually plays two characters in this movie. He plays both Dave Kovic and the president Bill Mitchell, and of course Sigourney Weaver plays First Lady. So the premise of the film is about taking the concept of how the president would have a body double on occasion, like if he's well, in this case, they use the example of him leaving a hotel after a speech. Uh, Kevin Klein's character of Dave Kovic, he is actually going to just basically walk down a hall. His job is just to walk down a hall to the main door where he gets into a limo and takes off. That's basically his whole job that he was supposed to do. The movie expands on this premise. Not it's not necessarily a great film in that aspect. Like there's a lot they gloss over, a lot they just don't cover because obviously that would be a huge thing, right? Um, so they instead they do a very lighthearted film. Um, I think the intent is to put it in the perspective of Dave Kovic, um, just this everyday dude, kind of a Mr. Smith Goes to Washington type feel, where he's just overwhelmed by, oh wow, it's a lot of that at first. Um, he is working actually as kind of a recruiter, I think, just getting people temp jobs. He does have a friend, the hilarious Charles Grodin, who will is actually playing a accountant, and so he was able to, as an accountant, he's able to hire a couple of these people just for temp jobs and just for a short time period. That actually plays in the film later on. I'll get to that. Well, maybe not. Um, what they do is Kevin Klein as the president. This gets a little complicated. So Kevin Klein as the president, his character as the president is just he's not a good dude. He's the antithesis, the opposite of Kevin Klein's character, who's very upbeat. He's very childish. He's very full of life, outgoing. Whereas the president's very stern, very reserved. He's just been in the game for a long time. He's corrupt. He's just a negative dude. I hate using that term. Yeah, no, he's just a corrupt asshole. Um, so him and his staff, they actually try to find some guy to, play as his double, and they find Dave. Now, the way they find Dave is actually they use the Secret Service. And in the movie, the Secret Service is actually played by the great Ving Rhames. Ving Rhames, this is before Ving Rhames was in Pulp Fiction back in 93. I think Pulp Fiction came out in 94. And this is actually when he still had hair. If I remember correctly, he was actually asked to have his head shaved for that role in Pulp Fiction, and he kept that was like a mainstay in his career for a long time. I think he still has like a bald head. But yeah, I remember watching this movie before actually Pulp Fiction when I was a kid, and it was interesting. I thought it was kind of interesting that he kept it. Um, he finds Dave at a public speaking event where he actually does imitation of the president. Now he's not necessarily a like politically involved necessarily. He just does like the temp agency thing and just does like public events acting as the president. They have a cheesy scene kind of towards the beginning of the film where it's there's like a mom and daughter, and she says to her mom, "He's like, is that really the president?" And she's like, "Gee, I sure hope not." Like, it's just the right type of cheese. It's ricotta for me. So Ving Rhames actually kidnaps Dave at his place, and they take him to the hotel, and they put a tuxedo on him, and he's getting him ready, and they're like basically don't say anything, just walk down the hall, maybe shake a couple hands. That's about it at most. You know what I'm saying? Keep it minimal. Um, he does a great job during the whole thing. There's actually a scene where Kevin Klein, they do that split screen that they used to do back in the day for special effects, where Kevin Klein's in one scene and then Kevin Klein's on another scene where they're just meeting each other at different times, and like it's a great contrast of their characters. Um, as the From there, then you have Kevin Klein. He goes off to down the hall. He goes out the door. Now, just as he's ready to leave the door, he hasn't said anything really to anybody. He's just doing his job, and he gets overwhelmed with the moment. I mean, who wouldn't be? He get to play the president for like 10 minutes. He's a God bless you, God bless everybody, or like God bless America, right? And he just takes advantage of it. The whole crowd just erupts, and applause, and he just loves it. You don't see actually what happens, but you see the effect of where Ving Rhames actually grabs him by the back of the suit and pulls him back down into the limousine, and that's actually a pretty funny scene. There's a great back and forth. They tried to build that relationship up between um, Dave Kovic and I think his name was Dwayne. Yeah, I think it was Dwayne. Is Ving Rhames' character as a Secret Service agent? Um, he's basically playing the straight man to Kevin uh, as uh, as Dave, and so the the challenge of the film is for in that between that relationship is just basically how Dave can get Dwayne to open up about being not just a suit, and so he like throughout the film he says, you look pretty good in a like a sweater vest, maybe like a turtleneck, something kind of change it up, and so that's later in the film. During the time where he's actually leaving and they're on their way back to drop Dave off, you actually get to see what's happening with the real president. He actually left after the speech at the hotel, who then goes off and does his other thing. Dave in the limousine has a sentence about saying, "Gee, I wonder what the president's up to. Maybe it's something important." It's not. He's actually just uh, having an affair with the secretary, who's played by the great Laura Linney, and I think this is really early in her career as well. Um, she was actually, I think this is one of the first movies I've actually seen her in. After this, I think I remember her in Searching for Bobby Fischer, and then after that, it was The Truman Show, and then I saw her on the Sam Adams special on HBO, and then I think she was on, I don't know, The Big C was a great show. I like that show. But yeah, she's great. Um, so she plays the secretary who's having an affair with Kevin Klein in the film, and while they're doing it, he basically has his stroke and puts him into a coma. She freaks out, calls the paramedics, and calls the chief of staff, Bob Alexander, and he's the main villain of the story, basically. And he sets up the whole plan about using Dave as a decoy, essentially, as the president. So that way, his ultimate goal is so that way he wants to hire Dave, basically get Dave to be the president, so then he can get dirt on the vice president, so that way they can toss the vice president out, and then Dave can elect Bob as the vice president to then become the president. So with that, this is a bit complicated in that plan. Uh, he's also got the communications director, uh, Alan, and Alan is kind of the wild card of the film. He starts off kind of bad with Bob. Just he's the follower in the movie. He follows Bob's lead, and then at the end of the film, he has the turn, and he becomes kind of the good guy, but not totally. Um, in story, he still kind of gets away with it, but he doesn't because it's a lighthearted film. They want Andy's Kevin Dunn, so he gives him that great good guy turn at the end. Um, Once they actually find out about the president, then they get Dave to then take him back to the White House. They catch him up. Now, because Dave is playing this childish character, as I was talking about, he's just, wow, I'm at the White House. Like, oh, wow, what's going on? And he has no idea what this is all about. Alan is the one to actually spin the conversation. So to tell Dave about what happened, and he uses this metaphor where imagine the country's in a car trying to get it to the hospital, like how he's trying to get if he was trying to get his mom to the hospital, like would you run a red light and things like that. um, and so Dave naively says yes, and of course I would help out, yeah, that. And he that's what he does basically. He's a just goes along with it. I get to be president. Wow, it's just it's just these bright eyes. This attitude. He from that point he just becomes president. Um, you know, forget the line of secession, and that's how it goes. He does ask him about the vice president. Actually, he does say, "Well, so what about the vice president?" And Alan, or no, Bob, actually. Bob's the one who says it. He's like, the vice president is, he's mentally unstable. He's not on there, basically. You don't actually get to meet the vice president yet. You do later on. It comes to find out, you see him as played by Bing Kingsley. Amazing Bing Kingsley. He, they go along with that BS, basically, and Dave goes along with it. They then have to convince Sigourney Weaver as the First Lady. Now, she knows about Bill, her husband, and she knows about the affairs and the secretaries before. So she's already pissed at him, and the whole cheating thing. And it's valid. So when they have a meeting for the first time, she gets mad at Dave, obviously, for thinking it's Bill. They do the scene where they have to step out of the balcony of the White House, where they do the classic wave to the Commons. Hey, everything is okay. Hey, world. We're still here. Stay safe and don't let it become World War III. Okay. Blah blah blah. Um, it's great because during this whole introductory scene, they're really coaching Dave along to become, Bill in this movie. You tell him, basically just tell him verbatim what to say. He's, and it's a classic bit about repeating what somebody says. And so they try to get Dave off of the balcony, and are like, go, 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 like trying to get off the stage, right? And so Dave publicly yells it out. He's like, go, go, go. And just walks off. And that's pretty much it. So people are like, I'm just scratching their heads. And it's kind of funny, but there's just that the whole scene of I mean, it's a lighthearted movie, obviously, but that's how it's played out. Now he's only told to tell her, thanks for doing this, Helen. I'm not sure if it was Helen or Ellen. Ellen. It is Ellen. The she's like, thanks for doing this, Ellen. And it's the only thing he can say because that's the only thing he was told to say to her. And so she just gets pissed and walks off, and she's buying that he's the president. And of course, because of the conflict between the two, they're not staying together and they don't talk to each other. They stay in different rooms, and she's got her own thing with helping out homeless people and things like that. And so there's just that split. So that contains her relationship. It then cuts to a montage of him, enjoying the fruits of being president. He is, meeting all these people, and he gets to throw the first pitch at the baseball game, and he's rolling around on the front lawn with the president's dogs, and like he's showing the life that the previous president did not do. Bill Mitchell. He is, of course, people notice that, including Sigourney Weaver. She starts to take, what's going on with this guy. He gets out of a. They called it a minor stroke. Also, they covered it up where they called the president just basically had a minor stroke, and not even that. They would call it like a depressed respiratory illness or something. I don't know what they call it, but it was just they minimize it as much as possible. He so he gets to do all the presidential things, and I'll have fun. From there, they actually have a scene where they go to a homeless shelter because that's part of which was actually set up by Alan. He wanted to actually set up the date between him and his wife to go to this homeless shelter, so that would just basically be a PR move. At the same time, or just around the same time, Bob, the chief of staff, actually vetoes on behalf of Dave as the president a series of bills to help out the homeless and to help out homeless shelters. So just going against that whole dynamic. Now at the homeless shelter, there's a great scene between Dave and this little kid, and he's doing this magic trick, and it's just again like this childlike wonder, and it brings out this great connection between him and Sigourney Weaver, and she sees this different side of him. On the way there to the homeless shelter, there's a scene where he actually catches a glance at her thigh, basically at like her dress slips open a little bit, exposing at the top of her kneecap and stuff like that, where he kind of glances over and looks at it, and and then looks away quickly as she looks over. And so like that was kind of her first indication that like that was not her husband, because like he has not done that in like years, right? So that was kind of like our first tip off. When they get back, that's when they find out, or she finds out about the homeless shelters and the bill that was vetoed. She gets mad at him. He, he goes to find out what's going on with Bob, and they get into an argument. Bob basically tells him off because, at that point, the power struggle is Bob over Dave. And from there, then he tries to develop the relationship between him and her. He also goes to develop the relationship between him and Ving Rhames. There's a great scene between them two eating a sandwich, which is hilarious. There's just these great scenes that he has with the different cast. Um, there's a scene where him and her they break out of the White House together, and they imitate they do it they play themselves like he's basically playing himself doing the imitation of the president, and then she gets involved with it, and they do this whole bit, and it's hilarious. Um, I don't want to give too much away. I've given a lot away, but this is just the beginning. I haven't even gotten into the main details. There's another great scene where he has to save the because of what Bob did. Now he has to save the homeless shelters, and there's a whole great scene with that. They bring in his friend Murray, who's Charles Grodin from early in the film, to basically balance the national budget because he can do that as like a small time accountant, um, which is just I like it. It's because it's so simple and it's just a lighthearted movie. Um, they developed a relationship between each of the characters. There is growth with being Rhames' character a little bit, but it's still kind of played off. Um, they managed to figure out you figure out how he gets out of that type of situation, and what happens. You get to find out more detail about the previous president and scandals and things like that. So like that, he's got that to worry about. Um, it's a funny movie that I would definitely recommend because it's just a good movie to watch. It's just a lighthearted, childlike movie that's not to be taken too seriously in terms of the government aspect of it. There's a lot of cameos in this movie. A lot of cameos. Early '90s Arnold, like from Kindergarten Cop era, he's in this film. A lot of senators and Congress people, and well-known figures of the time were in this film. Um, yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, it's just a lot of that, and they do try to mix it in with government and things like that. But the overall story is very self-contained. It's not. I mean, I haven't even talked about Being Kingsley yet. Being Kingsley, there's a great scene between him and Kevin Klein talking about how he first got started, and um, yeah, that's just totally totally worth a watch, and I think it's really underrated. If I had to grade the film, I'd say I'd give it a solid B, um, maybe B minus, because it's not a perfect film, but it's just a nice movie. It really is. It's just a nice movie. Um, that's what I gotta say about that. And if you like, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe and hit the notifications. I will see you all next time.